Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's a pleasure today to be joined by Frank Maeder, who is the president of NedGraphics and Optitex. Welcome, Frank. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Hi, Debbie. Thanks for having me.
It's great. We're going to dive into one of my favorite subjects. I have a number of them, the evolution of textile design today. And we're going to talk about digital product creation and efficient production using the NedGraphics software suites. Really key, so important for any creative or production manufacturing house all over the world. Whatever you're making, whatever you're manufacturing, software is a huge part of that story now. So, Frank, could you give us a summary, a welcome, and an introduction? That would be great.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. So I'm the president of NedGraphics and Optitex. I joined NedGraphics a couple of years ago, so it's not that long ago. I joined as a VP of product initially, focusing on strategy and roadmap, and we'll come back to those topics. Then was promoted as the president of NedGraphics, and at the same time, more or less merged with another brand, which is called Optitex. So it's been a bit of a roller coaster for sure. There's a lot going on, and we'll come back to some of those topics, I'm sure. Maybe I'll just give you a tiny bit of background on both brands, because I think it will be useful as we start digging in. So it's interesting. So those two, NedGraphics, Optitex, now combined into one single company, single management structure. Different use cases, different solutions, but there's a lot of commonality in the history. Both brands are pioneers really in digital transformation, market leaders in their respective fields. They have certain industries in common, certain customers in common. So that's why we think that we can basically serve our customers better as a single entity. So NedGraphics has been in business for about 40 years. So it's not a startup. It's a software company, but not a startup.
Yeah, it's making me feel very old.
The software used to run before the Windows operating system was invented, just to give you an idea of the time span. So CAD software focusing on textile design this time. Again, we'll come back to this. Massive portfolio, most comprehensive in the market. So covering all outputs: prints, jacquard, Dobby, tuft, end-to-end workflow from creative all the way to machine conversion, connectivity. So really wide portfolio. And then Optitex is a tiny bit younger, not that much, about 30 years in business. Also CAD solution, but this time focusing on digital pattern making. So 2D design, 3D visualization. And of course, both of them are part of the same value chain, if you think about it. Again, different use cases, different users often. But as I said, serve some of the same industries. Apparel is a perfect example. And then sometimes the very same customers. The other thing that is common to both, which is really important to us going forward, is we work with global brands as well as the suppliers across the whole world in both cases. And we'll talk about some of those concepts later. We think there is something that we can help with on the technology side there.
Okay. Let's dive into the first question then. The evolution of creativity. How has the designer's role evolved?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting question. So you think of the fact the last few years, probably the technology has impacted this industry a lot. But actually, if you think about it, this has been going on for centuries. This role of the designer has been in textile, as we're talking about here, has been constantly evolving, actually, and really blending creativity and technology. So again, we think of recent examples, but think of the Industrial Revolution, right? So before that, there were textile designers working with kind of their local, materials, whatever they could find, traditional techniques, or real as a sort of artisan. And then, of course, Industrial Revolution came mechanization, specialization, globalization, etc. And then later on, synthetic fabrics, mass production, all sorts of things. So it's not new that this profession is evolving. So if we think of more recent past, I suppose, CAD technology, which is where NetGraphics comes in, where all of a sudden designers basically had more tools and had more flexibility, I suppose, to realize their designs and really just enable their creativity to be unleashed, really. And these days, it's probably even evolving further and probably accelerating. Some of the topics I'm sure we'll come back to around AI, around customization, driven by digital printing, sustainability. So all of those things are now impacting this profession. And really, it is still part of that constant evolution. So this blend of sort of technology and creativity is still exactly the same.
Yep.
And I think this is where the constant is. There is change, but the constant is these designers must keep embracing innovation and at the same time honor this rich history. And I think this is the only thing that is a constant, basically.
Yeah. One of the things from my perspective, because I trained as a textile designer many years ago, is the onboarding of more responsibility, most definitely for the creative. And I think all the software suites are working with that, aren't they? Which kind of leads us into that next question about NedGraphics software, because obviously it has had to adapt to blend. The three words I would choose here would be artistry, technology, and sustainability all in one. As the
Yeah,
designer is working within their workflow,
yeah.
they have much more responsibility than they used to have.
That's absolutely right. And in fact, those three sort of almost pillars, if you think
Yeah.
about it, come back again and again. So we think about those a lot. And it's exactly that, because as I said, this blend of sort of artisanship or artistry
Hmm.
with technology has been going on for decades, hundreds of years, arguably. But now I think is accelerating. And you're right that the role of the designer, I think a lot of that responsibility, to your point, has sort of moved upstream a bit. So the designer now is really involved in decisions that will impact things like sustainability, which is a huge topic. So to your question around how do we help with this, I suppose. So artistry, technology, sustainability. So our job basically as a technology supplier is to enable designers to do their job and sort of get out of the way almost. So in terms of the creativity, of course, that is our core business. This is what we do. We create tools for people to be creative, essentially translate their artistic vision into digital format. That's what we do, and that's what we'll keep doing. So the tools become more efficient and et cetera, et cetera. Well, in terms of the technology, what we do is we have to leverage this mostly for efficiency and precision. So if you think of interfacing with machinery, for example, weaving, knitting, printing machines, digital simulation, color management, all of these things are using technology for to make the process more efficient, to help reduce cycle times, less errors, and all of this. So it's those things. It's basically providing the tools and making sure that designers can really just sort of, again, maximize their creativity, but also use the technology to make the whole process more efficient. And
Definitely.
then in terms of, sorry, just on the sustainability side, we have, I suppose we have some impact. It is not the main impact, but we try and do this and do our bit through use of eco-friendly practices in the design stage. Material efficiency tools, as an example, right? Our software is able to calculate material requirements, minimize waste. So that's an important topic. Virtual sampling is probably the single biggest one that we can do. We can try and help our customers reduce their carbon footprint by decreasing the reliance on physical sampling. So this is probably the single thing that we can do as a software provider. And this is huge. Obviously, this is extremely important.
It is. I mean, being able to create multiple iterations of anything in a software suite. If I just look back to how we used to do it, I mean, taking one tiny portion of the design process here, color, for example, you now have the designer firsthand creating those colorways, and you no longer have the sampling departments, the production sign-offs. You just don't have it in the same way at all. The designer will actually prep and prepare all of that. And
Yeah,
then, as you said, we touched on before, and we'll go into it a little bit more, taking those colorways and those croquets all the way through to create finished digital twins of garments
yeah,
with
yeah.
nothing physical at all, really. And
It's a big responsibility. Yeah,
it's a huge
absolutely.
responsibility. And, at that point as well, being able to measure the viability of those products and the feedback
Yeah,
of those products, to be able to test the market with those digital products. It's so, so, so important now, isn't it?
yeah,
That we
yeah,
make
and
this seamless, really.
uh, absolutely, and it is, the sort of, I suppose, the undercurrent there is this need for efficiencies and reducing these cycles.
Yeah.
If you think of, the whole cycle, it would take years ago would be, counted in weeks or months, and now we're
Mhm.
talking days or sometimes hours. So
Hours.
you can see that this need for the sort of seamless workflow, and again, I'm sure we'll come back to that,
Yeah.
is more and more critical. And it's true that the responsibility lies upstream more and more,
Yeah.
as you were saying. So
Yeah.
yes,
But it also makes the designers so powerful. So, so
yeah,
powerful, because they can,
absolutely, yeah,
they are the architects of that product's journey right from its origination,
yeah,
its creation at
yeah.
the very, very beginning.
Absolutely. Even on the sustainability side, if you think that
Yeah.
the choice of material, for example, will be quite often in the hands of a
Yeah.
designer, and that's a huge impact on the complete product, of course.
Most definitely. Absolutely. A nice segue into the next question, the importance of seamless design. Let's talk about, if we can, how the latest product launches, particularly NedHub. So
Hmm.
how are you working with NedHub to improve the seamless design and connectivity, communication, productivity, all of those things brought together?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is so NetHub is a key new initiative of ours. We've released it or rolling it out alongside our recent NetGraphics 2025 release, and it's very close to my heart because it's really the start of that vision I had when I first came into the company as the lead for product. So the idea behind it, and I'll explain what it is in a second, but it really started from discussions, individual discussions that we were having as a company around new features, new ideas um, for our software to solve problems for our customers. And essentially, as we were discussing all of this, we ended up thinking of or finding out two main themes or categories. One was around how customers interact with us as a company.
Hmm.
For example, they were looking for more flexibility. If you remember, in not so distant past, with COVID and lockdown in particular, the ability to work from different places, having the ability to be very flexible like this. So that was a big theme. And then the other category, of course, was more product and feature specific. And here we identified this business problem around connectivity, around having our software better connected with third-party tools,
Hmm. Hmm.
ERP, PLMs, etc.
Yeah.
And so when we were starting to look at these things, still in isolation, um, this theme of connectivity just kept coming up again and again and again in different sort of shapes. So we started looking into that. So whether it was connectivity between us and our customers, between customers and their own networks, these sort of same things kept coming up. And and when we started looking at how we solve these things, it became quite obvious that the old sort of concept of a desktop application was really
Mhm.
not easy, right, as a
Yeah.
platform to try and solve these things. And that's where we sort of turned to the cloud. Um, Not so much because the cloud is a popular thing. It clearly is, but really as a means to solve these issues. And it's fair to say we didn't really have much expertise in there, so we had to find talent to do with this, find people who knew about these things, and then we started looking into how to solve this thing. And then as soon as we did, and as soon as we started looking at these requirements, then this concept of NetHub became completely natural, and it's sort of emerged as a solution that would help with all of these things.
Hmm.
So basically, what it is it's NetGraphics cloud-based framework, if you want to call it, which again can be used for all sorts of things. It's a sort of data exchange interface, if you want to call it this, and we will use it more and more for all sorts of things. So as we just released NetGraphics 2025, the latest release, we are basically rolling out 2 solutions within NedHub. So NedHub is an umbrella offering. One is around licensing, a solution called NedKey. So cloud-based licensing enables you to move your seats around as you need them for better flexibility. And the other one is called NedLink, and NedLink is this interface between our software and third-party systems like ERP and so on. So these are the 2 kind of first products, if you like, or offerings within NedHub, but that's only the beginning. We'll start rolling more. We have lots of ideas. We'll come back to some of those later, I'm sure. AI, all sorts of different things that we can roll out under this umbrella of NedHub.
So does the hub almost become a dashboard? Is that kind of how it will work?
That is one of the things it will do, exactly. So single place where people can go, manage their accounts, manage their sort of software and so on, and then also manage this connectivity with other solutions that are not NetGraphics specific. So again, this is the clue is in the name, I suppose. Really becomes this hub of activity for anything to do with NetGraphics and or the outside world.
It's so important now, isn't it, though, that you just stay in one visual location and you're not hopping about to lots of different programs and moving data and file formats, which have always been a problem many, many years ago, bringing those forward too. Very, very, very important, I think, that these cloud-based technologies become more and more seamless for everybody. How does that work then? Let's just touch on quickly on exploring the workflow for Ned, perhaps with Adobe applications, which are, a huge part of everybody's day in the creative field.
Yeah, absolutely. So before I jump to this, the sort of connectivity and cloud-based technologies, because it helps, is really important. If you think of initially when I talked about the 2 brands, NedGraphics and Optitex, as I said, one of the things that is a common thread is this concept of end-to-end workflow with brands that we sell to on the one hand, and then their suppliers very often on the other side of the world. So there are challenges, particularly in a very analog workflow, very often still, and we think we can solve problems with technology and cloud technology in particular to leverage sort of assets between these different stakeholders. But in terms of the design experience specifically, we've been working with Adobe for many years. In fact, we have Adobe plugins. We call them NetGraphics for Adobe. It's kind of sort of does what it says on the tin.
Okay.
And these are very similar tools that we have under sort of classic NetGraphics. Classic NetGraphics being a desktop application with all of the functionality, but we provide some of that functionality as a suite of Adobe plugins. And the reason is really simple. Adobe is a complete de facto standard in design. Whatever design you do, whatever vertical you are in, you will go to school and you will learn Adobe. So they've created an amazing ecosystem that works extremely well. But of course, it's a horizontal platform. So it does everything, but it doesn't do any of the really specific things that particular industries need.
The specifics of particular industries. It's like really diving deep into the nuances, isn't it, here?
Exactly. And that's why. And even Adobe, we work with them very often. And on a continuous basis, we'll tell you the same thing. They can only provide the sort of the features that are generic enough, so they work across most verticals. And then we come in and do the last bit, but the last bit is crucially important. So we provide these tools that essentially augment, if you like, the Adobe application and functionality, which is specific to repeats and color reduction and all of those things that are critical to our industry. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But in the general kind of context of an Adobe application, again, it sort of minimizes the learning curve. As I said, a lot of students will learn how to use the Creative Cloud, and therefore for them to get into this industry with kind of minimal learning is a great opportunity.
It's familiarity as well, isn't it, between these software programs now as well? You know, feeling as though you're in a familiar space, familiar
Yeah,
icons, familiar buttons, familiar
exactly.
navigation, all of those things. Super, super important for speed of manufacture.
Yeah, and also this, it's also a generational thing. As I said, the tools, the sort of classic desktop tools that we've been developing for decades are, extremely powerful, still very, very useful, particularly in production. But you think of young designers that have a different user experience expectation, right? They work on tablets, they work on all sorts of technologies which are different. And so for us to be able to tap into this and help with this transition from only knowing Adobe to something that is more specific to a vertical industry is critical. So we have these plugins, we have still the desktop applications, and the two are not mutually exclusive. It's really kind of whatever makes sense. But the concept of having this seamless workflow is still relevant, whichever way we do it. We know, for example, that even customers using our desktop products all use Adobe to an extent. 100% of them do. There is not a single designer in the world, whatever the vertical they're in, that doesn't use Adobe for something. So for us to embrace it and augment it is a very important topic.
It comes back to the power of partnership again, doesn't it? Really,
Absolutely.
So important. Just before we move on to the power of partnership, we'll talk about those. I think it's also really important, whilst we're talking about being seamless, to bring in the word transparency. So important for it's been important for the past, present, and more important for the future. How are you leveraging your software to deliver transparency across the workflow? I'd really love to hear about that.
Yeah, so this is mostly to do with data. So leveraging and be able to share this data back and forth is the key here. So NedHub and NedLink in particular is really our kind of attempt to try and help with this. There's a lot of information that should be transferred across different systems. If you think of a traditional kind of job of the designer, the information comes from somewhere, and in the olden days would be printed out on some kind of job sheet. We can make use of this. If we can connect to an ERP system, chances are that the system will know what the specification is, what the colors are, what yarns might be that are used, and so on. So we can make use of this. And then once we're in our applications, we can also we can enrich that data. Our software knows about material consumption, for example. When you start weaving a design, it's very hard to understand how much material is needed until you actually get it done. And we can provide that information back or forward to the next system. So it's about providing that data and really sort of breaking those silos, which are historical, where every system does their bit. And then everything is then duplicated with the risk of errors and inefficiencies. Exactly. So it's about leveraging this data essentially.
And it's embedding all of that information in one place, using one language in one location, which is constantly updated. Super, super, super important, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's interesting. I have some background in industrial manufacturing. I used to look after some robots portfolio in the past. And it's interesting because if you look at manufacturing, traditional manufacturing, you think of automotive, etc. I've been very advanced in terms of connecting a lot of these and using these open platforms and so on. And the textile industry is a bit behind, it's fair to say, because again, it's a very analog industry. So it didn't really have to get to this point. But now it's definitely happening, and I think it has to because of efficiencies, because of these sort of global supply chains. So now it's sort of catching up and really getting into this concept of, again, open platforms and sharing of information, etc.
It is sharing information, and along with it, the transference of that knowledge, isn't it, really, to all parties? They can see a clear picture of what's going on. And it's only with that clear picture that can anybody meet the regulation and certifications that are either
Yeah.
here or on their way. We
Oh
have
yeah.
to embed that transparency into every element, every point, pixel of the supply chain has to be there, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Exactly. And you're right. The pressure will come from regulation in many ways, but it's a good thing. This is definitely very much needed. And sometimes you need that regulation to kind of push people to evolve, don't you? Very often that's where it starts.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
in this case, it's definitely the case that this is, forcing companies to
Yeah.
evolve and
But
innovate.
it's also important, isn't it, as well, to embed that data in a format that can be recalled at the level the person needs to hear it as well. You
Yeah.
don't want chapter and verse. You don't want to download a white paper
Mm.
every single time. You don't want to go down a rabbit hole of, so much information, so much data, you're out of your depth. You just need to nuance that software so
Yeah.
it brings you the information you need to tick the
At
box,
the
to move
right
on
time.
at the right time to move to the next level.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Super important, super important. The power of partnership, we're back at the power of partnerships and the end
Yeah.
of the silo, which is something I don't know, I just really like saying this at the moment. Can we discuss Optitex and the benefits of digital product design? Because
Yeah.
we can't we can't continue to create and design in the silo, regardless of where you reside in the supply chain.
Yeah.
Whether you're an independent designer or a retailer or a manufacturer, whoever you are, we have to link it all together somehow. So really interested to talk about how Optitex has been developing and the benefits of digital twins and seamless design, I guess, again.
Yeah. So it is. That's the fascinating thing. Those themes are very much the same ones we've been, talking
Yeah.
about ever since we started. So yeah, Optitex is fascinating. So this is a pioneer in digital pattern making. So again, digitizing an ancient craft, if you
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
very complex variables. If you think of, materials and all of that. So this is really, where we can have a big impact. And the silos there are critical. I think it is becoming very clear now that no single company can solve all of these issues and all these problems, which are very complicated, in a single solution. So we have to um, operate in this sort of ecosystem, if you like, and really just work with the best of class partners that we have. And this is a common theme for me, certainly also for NetGraphics, as we move away from this concept of a sort of desktop application which only does its bit and then doesn't connect to anything. This is over. So we start exploring that end-to-end workflow between NetGraphics and Optitex, for example, and then of course between the individual solutions and again best-in-class partners. So
Yeah.
again, PLM vendors. You talked about the avatars, digital twins, all of these things, 3D, 2D. So all of these things come into this whole mix, and it's extremely complicated. So I think more and more, as I said, people are realizing that trying to solve this, from a single supplier is impossible. And so what we have to do is really just embrace this concept of partnership, and work with our customers. Our customers are the ones that basically drive the requirements. They talk to us and try and push us, and then very often the integration or connectivity discussion starts with this, with our customers kind of putting the right people together so we can solve these big problems, big issues.
Absolutely. Early on as well with in the growth and the birth really of digital materials, the accuracy of those digital materials,
Mhm.
super, super important. And
Yeah,
even more important when you then put a printed pattern on top of it. You know,
yeah,
because all of a sudden you've not just got drape and handle and stretch and all of those things going on with the specifications of whether it's, a pair of leggings you've created or a beautiful silk dress. The pattern behaves differently on the different fabrics and moves and drapes differently on all of those things.
yeah.
So to be able to simulate that is an
Mm.
incredibly complicated craft.
It is the number of variables is quite frightening when you think of again, a manufacturing process, but one that has so many variables. I
Yeah.
don't think exists in any other kind of field. So yeah, so there are big issues. And again, when you think of cycle times and sort of this pressure that comes from that, this is where the digital transformation can help. And as I said, these
Mm.
industries that we're operating are probably a little bit behind in terms of that. The
Well,
thing is, though, again, due to these variables and materials in particular, I don't think that digitizing everything and you know, getting rid of something altogether is ever possible. I don't think that is the case.
I
But
agree.
it's about minimizing. If we can already do some of it,
Yeah.
some of that process in a digital way, I think this would already be very helpful. And then where this kind of you know, touchy-feely aspect is still needed, that's absolutely fine. And I don't think this will go away, but I think at least we can minimize that and try and reduce the cycle times if nothing else.
Absolutely, we can reduce the billions of samples that are made
Yeah,
every year. Obviously, in a production environment, you do have to create samples. There's no question of it, but we don't have to create quite so many
yeah,
moving all
exactly,
over the world. And also,
exactly that.
the only way to shift the supply chain is to supply on demand, and
Mm,
the only way to supply on demand with accuracy is by really sharpening up all of the processes throughout that supply chain. Otherwise, what we then do is we create waste at speed. We mustn't do that either.
yeah,
We
yeah,
really have to be careful. We leverage all, as you say, the leading partners, the leading technologies here, all
yeah,
sewn together using one language to create that power, the power, ultimate power of partnership, really,
mm,
and
exactly.
deliver that to the manufacturers, deliver that to the designers, deliver that to the customers, and then everybody together can work towards the end goal, which is to end waste and end overproduction, really.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's fantastic. Well, we're running short of time. We could talk forever,
Oh
no,
yes,
no doubt.
absolutely.
So let's move to talk about quickly. Then let's talk about the AI and the impact of that
Mm,
on product design and development. Because from our previous conversation, there's a lot of speed can be
yeah.
added using leveraging AI in that
Yeah.
era, I would think.
Yeah, and AI is of course is fascinating topic. I think if anyone thinks that whatever they're doing, whatever job they have is not going to be impacted by AI in some way, I think they're
Mm,
fooling themselves. I think it is coming in a huge way. Um, and in fact, in a creative process, there is a lot of confusion with this because all of our customers want to talk about AI. Some of them think there's an opportunity. Some of them are really dreading it, and everything in between. And I don't think the applications are very well known, particularly in design. If you think of generative AI, people see these images that are created now, videos and so on, and think, okay, this is, you know, this is going to come and take my job. And in the case of textile design, to go back to NetGraphics in this case, it's a really interesting thing because, funnily enough, it's easier with these AI models to create photorealistic images than it is to create something that we're familiar with in terms of design for you know, for patterns, because you have millions of photographs on the internet that these languages can learn from. Our patterns and design are very different. So the sort of traditional models don't really work that well. On top of it, designers have got their own individual styles. So to create something randomly is not going to work. They have a very particular style that they like to
yeah,
use.
it's a skill.
So yeah, exactly. So I don't think the sort of days, you know, it might come because these things are going fast, but the days of getting software to essentially replace the designer altogether are there. I don't think that's the case, but there are applications that we're certainly investigating around assisting. So, you know, creating variances of things or thinking of trends in color and how those could be
Yeah,
applied,
yeah.
the generation of colorways and stuff like that. So there are things that we can certainly help with the help of technology, but it is not uh, you know, a replacement for the role. It is really just an assistant for efficiency.
I totally agree with you. At the end of the day, the calculator didn't kill accountants either, did it? It just made their life easier in many ways. And I think
Yeah.
so often people underestimate the skill and talent of the designer because they create products to scale for the markets or the group, whether it's going to be a wall covering or a dress or a pair of shorts, whatever it's going to be. And they
Mm.
create those beautiful patterns that flow in those environments,
Yeah.
and they're created specific to end use. You know,
Yeah.
and to create, there are some amazing designers in the world that create the best selling patterns using the best formats, the best scale, the best colorways. All of those things are part of what the designer actually does quite often subconsciously. It's just all part of years of training and skill and
Yeah.
knowing the markets you're designing and creating for,
Yeah.
and visualizing your customer.
Yeah, and so the exactly, and that process doesn't change regardless of the tools, because again, you think of AI and people kind of fear it, but um, if you think about it again, back to the point I made right at the
Mm,
beginning, this was probably the same reflection when the industrial revolution came, right?
yeah,
People thinking, okay, these machines are going to take my jobs, but in
yeah,
fact, it has been that history of constant evolution, and still, in fact, being able to be more and more creative as these constraints go away in some ways. So it
yeah.
is a challenge, and it's not straightforward to think about where AI kind of um, helps or not in this case, but we can
Yeah.
certainly see some applications where it's going to be a useful add-on to the process.
Yeah, yeah. Solve the challenges and reap the benefits, I think, really, is the
Yeah,
most
and also
important step.
replace that's the sort of story of automation, I suppose.
Yeah,
Replace some of the more tedious tasks that have to be done, and I think this is where this technology will come in. We're certainly looking into it. We've got some promising features, as I said, that we're kind of looking at, and this is definitely coming.
yeah. I mean, the simplest of thing repeats.
Yeah,
Get looking back years, how many designers would really like to be able to just completely
yeah,
just automate repeat, but be able to see it in its true format, so you can look for tracks and issues and problems and things as well. Yeah,
exactly.
as
Yeah,
you say, just saving time really, and not removing and I think when you save time, you also give the creative more time. I mean, that's
that's
how
it.
I found text worked in my life,
Yeah.
definitely.
That's the way you have to look
Mm,
at it. It's really good, again, enabling people to focus on that creative process
yeah,
and removing the obstacles. So I think I said that at some point. It's our job to help with this and get out of the way,
yeah.
basically enable them to maximize their own creativity.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Frank, it's been fantastic to talk to you. Let's just recap. Let's just look into the year ahead then for your customers, for all of your
Mm.
stakeholders, really. As the industry evolves, could you share perhaps a couple of insights and what you think the leading innovations may very well be for the year ahead?
Yeah, so I think it's a little bit sort of a blend of everything we discussed today. So I think this concept of connectivity between systems is a big one as
Yeah,
again the industry sort of catches up on in terms of automation in general, seamlessly integrating the process, the stakeholders, those supply chains across different regions of the world. So this whole concept of connectivity will very much be helped with cloud technology. So I think that's a big one. Definitely. And then the other one is around that concept of automation, probably assisted by artificial intelligence. So really just taking away those kind of tedious tasks and making the whole process more um, efficient and enabling people to really focus on their core capability, which is in our case, which is the creative process.
oh, that's
So I think
great.
these are the big trends. And again, it's interesting because as soon as we got into it today, if you think about it, we kind of immediately went to these things. And the more you talk about these things, the more these same themes come again and again and again. So I think these are the ones to watch out for.
They affect the daily life of every single creative or manufacturer or printer out there. All of these
Yeah,
issues, and everybody is working together. There's no I in team, is there, as they say?
that's right.
None at all. Your next show, then, your next point of contact with your customers would be, I guess, is that Heim Textile in
Yes, this is it. So
January? Yeah,
I'm Textile Frankfurt in January. So yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. We will be there. Come and see us. We'll be demonstrating our software, version 2025. We'll be talking
yeah,
about NedHub, NedLink, all of those things. We can also talk about Optitex type topics if anyone is interested. So yes, that is the big one. It's actually coming very, very soon now. So yeah, well, absolutely looking forward to this and discussing
Yeah.
all of those things with our customers.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, I look forward to seeing you at High Textile.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I look forward to connecting again there as well. For anybody that's listening, it's absolutely fine to get in touch as well. We'll post contact details in the show notes so that you can get in touch with Frank himself or the NedGraphics team with any of your questions.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. It is a dialogue, so for sure we're
yeah.
available. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, nobody's ever alone in the design world, are they? They
No,
should be. Yeah, we can all work together to solve our challenges.
yeah,
Most definitely. Frank, thank you so much for your time today. Look forward to continuing the conversations in 2025.
absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
You're
Thank you.
most welcome. Thank you.